friends, and welcome to The World Transformed. All this week, we've been getting weird, and tonight we're going to geek out just a little bit. My name is Phil Bowermaster, and with me in the virtual studio is my co-host, Stephen Gordon. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Phil. How are you?
Well, I am super fantastic. Happy Friday. How are you, my friend?
Man, I am doing great.
Ready to geek out?
Oh, yeah.
You know, when the show was longer, we used to do a longer show than we do. We would reserve part of the Friday show for geeky topics. But now that we're doing these shorter shows, it's like, hey, we got to do a full geek out show once in a while. We got to get it out of our system. And plus, I feel we owe it to the listeners to talk about these critical issues. And this is the most important question of our time, Stephen. So I put it to you. We talked about this a week or so ago, and now here we are. The week is upon us. It's time to decide. Do we go see Solo or do we not go see Solo? Where have you landed on that one?
Okay, of course, the reasoning here is that it's some dissatisfaction with the way Lucasfilm is being run, and the last movie, which was called The Last Jedi. It is a very divisive movie. Some say it's a good movie. I do not believe that it is. I think it's terrible, to the point that I have really very little interest in continuing the saga. I don't care to see 9 now. Who cares? You've taken everything that I cared about from the previous movies and just kind of threw it away in The Last Jedi. So maybe to bring home to the fact that we're dissatisfied as a fan base, at least those who agree with how I feel about The Last Jedi, should we boycott Solo? And I'm kind of still on the fence a little bit. It looks like it's going to be a fun movie, Phil. Ron Howard is a favorite director of mine. You remember the movie The Paper? How good that was? Movie he did.
I've not seen that. I don't know that one.
It's I highly recommend it. It's just a day in the life of a small newspaper in New York City, and compared to some of the big newspapers that it's compared against in the movie, and it's just it's a fun movie, and that level of directing, if it's brought to Star Wars, I'm thinking it could be something pretty great. And we're hearing some negative reviews, but a lot of them are saying it's just it's a lot of fun, particularly once you get to the second half of the movie. Apparently, it might just kind of it takes a minute getting its legs, and then takes off in the second half of the movie. I kind of want to go see it, Phil, and I'm inclined to split the difference and boycott it on the opening weekend, register my vote, my dissatisfaction, and then go see it later.
Well, first off, if that's a thing, right? If not going to see a movie on the opening weekend is like a political statement, then I have made a strong statement against virtually every big movie that's come out in the last 10 years. Okay, so I'm.
Well, I'm going to say that opening weekend. The studios. They really. That's a big deal to the studios. How it plays the opening weekend, right? And
no doubt. But we're movie fans, right? Here's the problem. Fans have gotten so inside baseball. This
right.
is I've talked about this before. Fans create and destroy the things they love. It's amazing. It's amazing how they do that. The whole Star Trek franchise exists because a bunch of people who liked the TV show wouldn't let it go, right? They couldn't let it go, and they kept it going.
Did you say Star Trek or Star Wars?
Star Trek, right?
Okay.
That's how Star Trek came to be. Really, this whole phenomenon that it is, not just a TV show that ran 3 seasons back in the 60s, right? It's because of the fans, right? The fans made it. The
fans kept it alive, but then Star Wars, the success of the original Star Wars movie, Paramount looked at it and said, "Hey, we've got our own franchise here. Let's make some movies out of it."
But they were already going to bring it back at least as a TV series, thanks to what the fans did. So
Phase 2 was going to be, they already had it outlined, and instead they went with a movie series.
Yeah, and subsequent experience proved that later series would work. So the fans, because they loved it, right? Because they loved Star Trek, they made it happen. So that's like the best fan story of all time. To me, right. the worst story, the big cautionary story about fans is Stargate Universe, right? Where it's like, what happens is the creators start, reading the tweets, listening to the fans, letting them consult on the show, and ultimately the fans just killed it. Right? It's like, well, we love this so much that we're not going to let you do it anymore because
basically, you need to be more like Battlestar Galactica, the reboot. And then they gave you Stargate as Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, and nobody watched it.
Right. And here's to me, it's like the problem is you can't really satisfy the fans ever, right? So if you make The Force Awakens, pure fan service, it's just a remake of A New Hope. It's a remake of the first Star Wars movie, essentially. A lot of people love it, and then a few splinter off and say they don't like it, and then pretty soon there's a fairly substantial minority who said, well, this was, she's a Mary Sue, and this is a problem, and this is a problem, and this is a problem. And fans overreact. Now we got this problem where fans overreact to things. And Stephen, you are the classic example of this, and we're going to get into this in a moment. I think you
I'm being called out. I can do it.
you are the case in point Star Wars fan. I'm glad you're on the show this evening, both as a host and a guest here, because we can talk through this stuff. Fans overreact, and then like the creators now overreact. They act like fans too, right? So there were some negatives in The Force Awakens. So what did they give us? They give us The Last Jedi, and it's like all this overreacting to things people said about The Force Awakens. It's like, I don't know what they're going to do with the third one, right? Because what are they going to overreact to this time, right? It's like
I would agree with you, Phil, except for you're wrong about everything.
Fair enough. Okay, go.
Okay, all right. We didn't get The Last Jedi because they listened to the fans. I mean, The Last Jedi is not what the fans asked for at all. Okay, I mean, there were certain things certain expectations that were set up by The Force Awakens. Okay, and not a single one of those expectations were played out. It was Ryan. It would appear that Rian Johnson, instead of playing to the fans completely, which is a problem. I agree. He's basically from the very beginning of the movie where Luke throws the lightsaber over his shoulder. He's basically telling the fans, get over yourself. I'm going to make the movie I want to make. This is the art. This is the auteur problem. This is the opposite problem of fan service. This is not fan service at all, that movie. So I don't believe the fans can be blamed for the problems of The Last Jedi at all, because we were not given what we were not. In fact, Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson basically said that they don't need to listen to the fans, and that's that's the opposite problem.
If that were true, I think it would actually help. But they were listening. You're right. They weren't listening to the main body of fans who were saying, here's my Snoke theory, right? Here's my Rey theory. They weren't responding to that. They were responding to the fans who splintered off and criticized and said that it was too much of a remake. And
for example,
those were the ones that. What's that?
Yeah, for example, the Mary Sue problem. After The Force Awakens, there was among the fans, including myself, I say I was among them, said that there's a bit of a problem with Rey. Rey is too good at everything. She's got the Force. She apparently has all the skills of Han Solo out of the gate, right? And she's also got the Force too. So she's Han Solo. She's Luke Skywalker. She's everything, and she hasn't earned any of them. I mean, that's the hero's journey. You have to fall down and pick yourself up and learn from your mistakes and everything. That's the hero's journey. She's just got it handed to her in the first movie. Well, there's a bit of a problem that could have been addressed though in The Last Jedi, but instead they doubled down. She not only does she have the Force, but I mean she bests Luke in combat at one point on the island, right? I mean, she's Wookiee-splaining to Luke, I mean, when Chewbacca talks, she translates. Like, at what point in the last week and a half have you learned Wookiees, right? It's just odd. It's just that, it's like they've decided and I think it's kind of a feminist thing, but it's that, you know, she can't have a flaw, and that's a problem. I mean,
that's a huge problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's a problem from the point of drama. I mean, you've got to have, you know, for there to be any, for me to relate to a character, Phil, they've got to have some flaws. You know, I mean, I'm a flawed character myself. I see it in myself, and I work on those areas of my life to make, you know, to try to improve myself over time. If this person is perfect on arrival, then why do I even care? It makes it hard to identify and root for somebody like that.
If the character doesn't have a flaw, if the character doesn't need anything, what possible arc can they follow?
Right.
What's their story? What story can happen to a character who doesn't have a flaw? I agree. I think it's a big. None of this is to say that those were either good or bad movies. By the way, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the bounce back.
Last Jedi was terrible, but
yeah. Well, we're going to go back. We're going to listen to your initial reaction, Stephen. That's what I'm saying. That's why you're the worst, okay? Because the first time you see these movies, you think they're the best thing that ever happened, and then you turn completely around. This is disaffected
It took me a minute to process what they did in Last Jedi. I didn't get it the first time.
No, it took you a while to talk to the other fans and get into the group thing, huh, Stephen? You've got disaffected fan syndrome. Okay, this is the problem. I think we've created a whole new, like, clinical condition around Star Wars, and I think the fans just need to, first off, quit thinking about things like box office, okay? Do we like Star Wars, or are we like fans of a franchise, right? This whole idea that like we've got some rooting interest in whether something is the biggest box office movie of all time, or we're going to withhold our money on the opening weekend so that it doesn't do as well. It's like, if you don't want to go see the movie, don't go see it, right? If you want to go see it when you want to go see it. Because you like Star Wars, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
well, I am going to be more cautious about it, though. I'm going to wait probably at least a week to see see if it's any good, and I want to hear from some more reviewers and things, because quite frankly, it's almost a painful experience. Last Jedi was. And compare that to, say, the MCU. Okay, the MCU, they've been rolling out movies like 2 and 3 a year since 2008.
Right.
And there's they've had a couple of stinkers. And when I say and really stinkers too strong of a word, a couple of mediocre movies out of that group of 19 movies, right? There's 2 or 3, maybe 4 tops mediocre movies, and the rest have been awesome. And they're full of fan service, right, Phil? But they also tell a story. Yep. And I'm on board for that. And so I don't think that I'm asking for too much for them not to take established characters like Luke and Han and crap on them, and then make Princess Leia into the space flying superhero, and also.
Okay, we got to talk about that one specifically. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Because everybody points this out, and what exactly is the problem with Leia moving herself through space using the Force?
If
Yoda can lift an entire fighter out of the swamp and fly it, why can a person not propel themselves through space using the Force?
The first problem is surviving the decompression and being out there in space, and then apparently waking up enough to reach out and grab the ship using the Force. I think if a Jedi can survive the vacuum of space, then we've taken it to another place. The power itself is not established prior to this. Okay, that she could do, that anyone, any Force or not, could survive that long in the vacuum of space. That's one thing. There's other problems with it. Okay,
but you mentioned the flying, and you actually don't have a critique of the flying.
No, I really don't. Yeah. If he could, so reaching out with the Force and grabbing the ship and hauling herself back in, that's not the worst of it. I think the worst of it is how does she survive initially to do that? The other part is, so they had failed to establish that as a power of being able to survive in the vacuum of space, Force or not. Number 2, they had failed to establish that Leia had Force powers at all beyond the ability to feel things, like Luke calling out to her and Luke said, and you've got the power too. He mentioned that in Return of the Jedi.
You've got that power too. One day you will learn to use it as I have. We missed 30 years of her life. I can fill that gap in personally. Okay.
So do you think she's got a lightsaber under her cloak? I mean,
no, I don't think so.
I don't either.
I don't know that she was trained as a Jedi. But the other thing is, to me, that whole sequence is like when somebody's trapped under a car and suddenly their adrenaline kicks in and they can lift the car off, right?
Right.
Her super force, whatever, kicked in. Anyway, all I'm saying is the scene was weird, but it worked fine for me, and it was different. And I kind of, it was like, okay, well, that's an unusual thing. And we finally get to see Leia display some force powers, which we know that her potential, at least, was the same as Luke. So I was okay with that, but we digress. And we could probably do a full 90 minutes on Leia's flight through the, because, you know why, Steve? Because it's that important. But I don't mean to say these are good movies. I don't mean to say that The Force Awakens is bad or that The Last Jedi is good. I'm not actually making that case. I liked both of them okay. I liked The Force Awakens probably better than I liked The Last Jedi. There were times in The Last Jedi when I was just like, what? Wait? And it does feel like there's a real agenda driving some of it. And
also just the low-speed chase. I mean, that takes 2/3 of the movie, okay?
Right. Well, we talked about how Battlestar Galactica did that so much better.
In a single episode of the show, they dealt with that and did it better.
It's just that you've now got this unhealthy, I think, dynamic between the fans. The fans are getting, they smell blood, they sense their power, and this is what happened with Stargate Universe. And it's entirely possible that it's time for a shakeup, and that maybe Kathleen Kennedy needs to go, and they need to bring in some new blood. But I'm not sure the auteur thing is wrong. The thing is, that person then has to make a good movie, right?
Right. I agree. There are times, and there are a million examples. Think of Citizen Kane. Nobody was behind that movie. No. And Orson Welles was able to, and it was the one time in his career that he was fully able to give us the movie he wanted to give us. Right. And at no other time did he have that freedom, and none of his other movies were as good. Citizen Kane is some people say it's the best movie ever. And so that's an example, and there's plenty of other examples like that of the lone genius giving us his work of art. There's also plenty of examples of somebody giving us, and probably more examples of somebody's pet project for years. That's been brewing, and something they've been wanting to do all their career, and when they finally get a chance to bring it to us, it's crap. I mean, and there's plenty of examples of that.
Well, the interesting thing is Star Wars, the original Star Wars, was potentially both of those things. It was definitely, in some ways, George Lucas's Citizen Kane, but it also could have been this huge turkey, if you've ever seen these YouTube videos, had it not been fixed in editing, right? They found the great movie in the editing, didn't they? Right.
They really did.
Which, it's unfortunate that he divorced Marsha Lucas, because he desperately needed her for the prequels, or someone in that role. That there's a lot of great stuff in the prequels that actually could have maybe been good movies in the same way that the original Star Wars, not as good probably, but in that same way, had there been someone else to say, George, not this, right? That there's this interesting balance. But when you look at it, the original Star Wars, the first Star Wars and the first trilogy, it was just a gift, right? I mean, it was just like it came from nowhere, and it was wonderful. And that can never happen with Star Wars again, right? Because of where we are with Star Wars.
Well, but we have hope that it could go on and be something great. And I tell you, the hope is engendered in part by things like the MCU, right? We've seen film series that just seem to last forever and give us joy year after year. And probably the best example is the MCU, and it's owned by the same parent company, Disney. And so why? And you have so much goodwill. Give us some good stories. And that's pretty much. I think if they if they do that and remember that you have to actually tell a story with a character arc and make us invested in the new people, It's good to see the old people get the band back together. That's neat. But give us some new people to root for, and they did in The Force Awakens. I liked Poe and I liked Rey, even though I think she had a few problems in The Force Awakens. But they could have dealt with that. And I liked Finn. I liked these new people. And it seemed to me that those Poe and Finn were cast aside. They doubled down on Rey being a Mary Sue. And then all the other story problems that we've mentioned. I don't think that the problems that the fan base has with The Last Jedi are fan created. I just don't. It was a decision. Well, I mean, when you make a trilogy of movies, don't you think, Phil, that there needs to be a idea of the entire story? I mean, doesn't there need to be like a trilogy Bible?
At this point, whatever it was, I think they should have used George Lucas's stuff. I think they'd have been a lot better off if they'd have done it. Because it would have been like his idea executed by someone else, which is what you have in Empire Strikes Back and to a lesser extent
and that's a piece of brilliance,
Jedi. And you get good movies, right? If they had used his stuff, there would have been an arc to the story, and it would have been well executed. Instead, it's like, well, we know what we're doing here. We're going to give the fans exactly what we want. We're going to take it off in a bold new direction. Like they're experimenting, and the problem is the fans who no longer look at Star Wars as a gift. Which just to compare them, to me, I see the whole MCU as like the first Star Wars. Okay. It's like a gift, right? It's like this wonderful thing that has shown up. And each one is a different story. There's this rich, like, tapestry of characters to draw from, and they just keep doing it. They keep cranking them out. You don't have that with Star Wars, right? They don't have the next interesting Star Wars character to make a movie out of. They're trying to do it with Solo, right? They're trying to do it with whatever, I don't know, the Boba Fett movie is going to be, but it's not quite the same. There weren't those years and years of the comics and all that kind of stuff. So I don't know. I hope that Solo is good. I'll see it when I get a chance to see it. I won't go see it opening weekend probably, but I'm not going to not go see it
because you never do. Yeah, because you never.
That's not. I rarely do that.
If I don't go see it this weekend, Phil, it will be a conscious decision not to see it, and which that I realize that it's a little different. But you know what? I probably will be drugged to it. By my middle son Thomas. He wants to see it so badly, so I probably will go, and I'll let you know.
Okay. Well, I'm eager to hear.
It might be okay. So I'm hopeful.
My guess is it'll be flawed but have good parts, and that's all I'm looking for out of a Star Wars movie. To me, it's all Star Wars. I watched a big chunk of Revenge of the Sith on TNT the other night, right? Because it came on. Yeah. It's like
of the prequels, that one's actually at least it ends interesting, doesn't it?
It's got some really bad things, but it's got a few things going for it. That's kind of and that's what I got used to in the prequel. To me, that was my mindset after the first prequel was. Well, maybe it'll be better than the last one, right? And it's still Star Wars, right?
So that's what I call pod racing. Okay.
To me, I just think we need to have expectations about it's a movie, right? Maybe it'll be good. It's not going to be the best thing ever made, probably.
Right.
But
it's not going to heal the land and save your marriage, and no matter how good it is, right?
Right.
This is another thing. I realize that I will not get to see Solo as a 12-year-old boy.
Right. Exactly.
I will see Solo as a 48-year-old man, and so it's that's a different experience, and I realize that. I can't bring that magic back of what I experienced with the original trilogy. Because I'm not that person anymore. I realize that. But but don't suck. Don't actively go out of your way to suck. Okay.
Well, plus, I mean, with the Han Solo, you've got Harrison Ford reading a script and creating a character that's for the ages, right? I mean, that's lightning in a bottle, right?
When we say we love Han Solo, he looks back at us and says, "I know." So
Exactly right. So I go in with that expectation. Well, I know it's not Harrison Ford.
It can't be Harrison Ford again. So
this is some guy cosplaying Han Solo, basically. So as good as that can be, maybe it will be good. We'll see.
All right.
Anyway, I'm sorry I had to get tough with you, Stephen. I feel bad about that. I feel,
well,
it's an intervention that's been a long time coming. But it's for your own good. I want you to enjoy Star Wars. That's the thing. See, is for all the crap, I still like Star Wars, and I hope they'll make good movies. I see some of these really bitter fans, and it's like they hate Star Wars now. I'm like, oh, come on, it's still Star Wars. I mean, okay, granted, they've had a bad run, but. I just,
Well, I
want you to be happy.
I don't know that it's been that bad of a run. The Force Awakens was a pretty good movie. I liked, Rogue One. Okay, I realize that there's not a whole lot of character arc there, and we've got some cardboard characters in that movie. But
I enjoyed Rogue One. Yeah,
Rogue One was pretty good. Force One was pretty good. It was just that The Last Jedi was so bad.
Yes.
It like took away my interest of seeing what happens after that in that universe, and that's too bad. But we don't have that same problem with the Solo movie because it's not after that, and so maybe I can enjoy this one. Well, I'll give it a try.
I hope so. I hope we like it. I hope it's good. That's what I'm always going to say. I don't want it to be bad and for it to fail. Even whatever that does about behin the scenes of production at Disney and all that kind of stuff. Because there's a Star Wars movie, I want it to be good. I can't help it.
Right.
That's just that's how I roll. Well, we've gone way over our time. So I had other geeky topics I wanted to mention. That SyFy is canceling The Expanse. I think that's a real shame. It's a really fun show. Have you seen the new Lost in Space on Netflix?
I've seen the first 4 episodes, I believe, Phil, and it's interesting take on it. I haven't gotten further than the first 4 episodes. Have you gotten all the way through it?
I haven't gotten all the way through. I've watched about the first 4 too. I'm watching them one at a time slowly. But I wanted to say, once again, the makers of The Last Jedi just need to watch some more TV. You want to see a show that deals with the dynamics between male and female leadership in an outer space situation, right? Lost in Space does it kind of they do it in kind of an interesting way. It's not this heavy-handed.
Pretty much the last 30 years have been a deconstruction of the fathers knows best mentality, right? In entertainment. Right. So we well know that men are not perfect. So why do women have to be perfect now? Why do we have to go to a mama knows best mentality? Why don't we just be equals? And that
exactly. In Lost in Space, you've got this. Yeah, you've got this interesting give and take between the two leads, right? Where and you can kind of see the point of view of both of them. I thought that was just an interesting. It's like, well, see, you can do a story like that. You can have that if you want to have that tension in a story. You can do it, and it can work. The other thing I like about it is the robot is really mysterious and cool, and it's different from the robot in the original. And every week, it's not weekly, obviously, but every episode, they get into some mess and they have to get out of it. And for a formulaic, old school science fiction show, I'm enjoying it. Finally, Cobra Kai. If you like the Karate Kid, you got to watch Cobra Kai. That's all. It might be the best.
Have you seen? I haven't seen any of those.
Check it out.
Is it fun?
Check it out.
Is it fun?
I think you'll enjoy it. It goes in a very different direction than you think it's going to, and it's quite good. All right. Well, Stephen, I think we've done one of our old 30-minute shows here, pretty much. We can't help ourselves.
Okay. Well, when we have fun, the time flies. That's just all that we
start geeking out, and we geek out, and that's all there is to it. Well, thanks, folks, for being with us. We appreciate your comments on the YouTube channel there, and we will be back next week with 3 brand new shows. And until next time, live to see it.